Welcome, everyone, to the next wave of retail. My name is Robin Wilson, and I'm the industry advisor with SAP and a partner of the Robin Report. As you know, the Robin Report and the Cole Center for Retailing at the University of Wisconsin-Madison is presenting this thought leadership forum. And today we have Rising Star alumni from the university to talk about the future of retail. And I'm really excited to hear what they have to say, what their thoughts are, and where they think the industry is headed in the future. So that being said, let me just go around and have you all introduce yourselves. So Emma, let me start with you. So welcome, everybody. And go ahead, Emma.
My name is Emma Brandenburg. I graduated in May of 2020 as a retailing and consumer behavior major from the University of Wisconsin. I currently am in assistant merchants working at A&F Corp. And I'm really excited to be here today. So thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. Anesha, we'll do you next. We'll have you introduce yourself next.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Anesha. I also graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, May of 2020. I am currently in Minneapolis working for Target as an associate buyer.
Awesome. And Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Donovan. I'm a retailing and consumer behavior grad from 2016. I am currently an associate buyer for Macys out in New York.
Very good. I used to be a buyer for Macys as well, a long time ago. We wanted to really hear, and I want you all to share with our audience what you all are thinking about when it comes to where you think retail is going. And so I think that we're going to start with this really heavy question, right? Of where do we think retail is going? So let's go ahead and start with Megan. Let's start with you on that one.
Sure. So, I think we can all agree the last year has really shifted the industry in total. Just kind of looking at where the industry has been in the last year and a half. The shift is really going to MCOM or to our comm business, to digital, to .com. And, how can we stand apart from our competitors online? How can we drive social traffic to our channels online? Creating this online relationship with the consumer has been, more important in the last year and a half than it has been thus far in my career.
So Anesha, with Target, what are your thoughts around where it's going and what's happening?
Yeah, I think for me personally, again, the omni-channel experience right now needs to be as seamless as possible, like more than ever, especially just with COVID. And now that things are reopening and then reclosing, like, how do we make sure that guests everywhere are able to get what they need easily? Like, it's not a hassle, like, oh God, the stores are closing. Now I'm not going to be able to get this, this, and this because it's only available in store. So I think really just keeping that digital aspect in mind.
So that talks a little bit about where the future is going. So keeping digital in mind. So what do you think is the ideal model? So Anesha, I'll ask you that, and then we'll go back and ask Megan. So what do you think is there a mix? What's your thoughts about what that retail model should look like?
Honestly, I think it really depends on the retailer and what you are providing for the customer, whether that be clothing or services, food. So when we think of just like the broader retail aspect, I think, again, the omni-channel has to be what right now, that's what's working. But it's kind of hard to say, especially working, depending on where you work. So if you're in a trend-based business, what does that look like? What is the ideal model for that look like versus if you are selling food? So I think keeping the guest in mind at whatever type of service or product you're giving, it makes sense. But I think it just, for each retailer, it'll differ.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that it'll be very different depending on what the retailer offers. So I think you hit the nail on the head. So anything to add from that, Megan?
Yeah, just, kind of almost piggybacking off of what Anesha was just talking about with the omni-channel. It's just, not only is it making sure you're showing up from a product standpoint in the omni-channel, but you also want to show up from an experiential standpoint, at the omni-channel, whether that's the Instagram shops, that's getting bigger and bigger almost by day on Instagram. I'm seeing more of my favorite brands offering, an option to check out just within the platform. So just giving, and, with the rising importance of TikTok too in social media, I'm sure it won't be long before we start seeing shopping within TikTok. So just kind of having that omnipresence in addition to just having the omni-channel availability to really, hammer home that relationship with the customer and that you're always going to be there when the customer needs your products.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. Retail, not always top of mind for everybody, right? So when you go into college, you get out of high school and you're like, I'm going to go be a doctor, I'm a lawyer, or journalist, or, retail's not necessarily top of mind. So Emma, I'll ask you, what kind of attracted you to the retail industry?
Yeah, I would say for me personally, I'm an extremely creative person, and also love connecting with people on a very personal level. And so I would say the retail industry in general allows this perfect balance of being able to continue to connect with people on a very personal level. You're looking and trying to achieve this sort of puzzle of how can I best fit these consumer needs? And you need to understand them. You need to understand what makes them tick in order to provide them the right product at the right price at the right time. And with that also requires a lot of creativity there. So I think for me personally, I was just very drawn to the very human aspect that retail provides, and also that creative and very product focused aspect as well.
So you have a little bit of a different role than your colleagues here. When you think about the retail industry, you're providing the product for private label, and then you, Megan and Anesha, you guys are at the retailer, so you would kind of be working with Emma, right? So it's a little bit of a different role, but let me just ask, let me go back to you, Emma, and ask you, so what do you think will keep you focused and staying in the retail industry?
Yeah, I mean, the customer is consistently changing, and this continued expectation that retailers change and move and grow alongside of these customers is extremely motivating. And I think it's a challenge that will continue to keep me focused within this industry for a long time. Knowing how much there is to learn, explore, and create for these customers is really exciting. And I think because of that, this constant, like I mentioned before, puzzle or thing that we need to solve as retailers is really exciting, and something that I look forward to working on for the rest of my career.
Yeah, great. How about you, Megan?
Yeah, a lot of similar, kind of just going off of what Emma was just saying, the endless options to, get our customer into stores. It's also almost an industry full of endless career opportunities. In my time since I've graduated, I've worked in planning roles, I've worked in buying roles, as well as digital merchandising roles. And it's just so great to be in an industry where I can explore, different passions as these passions kind of come up in my life. I can go find a career in marketing if I'm interested in marketing, if I want to kind of transition to tech and maybe UX. There's roles in the industry for that as well. Mm-hmm. And then, continuing too off of what Emma was saying, it's just, it's nice to kind of feel like we are, making a difference in people's everyday lives. And, maybe it's just, an outfit here or there, but, you never know the kind of impact that a good outfit can have on someone's day.
Well, they do say that, outfits really, clothing actually does help you feel great from the inside out.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And all of that. So I totally get that. So let me, we've started to talk a little bit about, omnichannel and making sure that, leaders need to think about omnichannel and really what is going to be relevant for the customer. So Anesha, let me just ask you, shopping experience. Where do you think that will go to stay meaningful to a customer? And, we talked a little bit about in-store and online. So, I think everybody kind of understands where you're thinking about that. But what about this whole idea of, let's make the experience? phenomenal, which we always
Yeah.
want.
I think just again, like keeping up with what's going on, right? You can't easily tear down a store and recreate it every time there's something new, right? But when you think about what people are wanting, like customers, they want a tailored experience. Every customer is in the store, they're thinking about themselves. They are not thinking,
That's right.
I wonder what the person next to me wants when she's walking through this aisle, right?
Mhm.
So I really think creating a tailored experience almost to who's shopping your stores, keeping the guest in mind, like the younger generation, they are all the TikTokers, right? They're going there and they're making videos in these stores. How do you make sure, right, that the presentation is up to par when these
Right.
like when these younger children are in the stores and they're creating content that they don't even know is like blowing up for this retailer where like right, paid or not paid, it's the experience just needs to be like fun. I say that because I'm a very like, okay, like what's next? What is this? Like I saw this on the internet. Let me go and find it.
Mhm.
So I think really just keeping up, especially I know I've seen a lot of retailers start working through like the in-store digital experience where they have like iPads at the shelf and you can pull up your face and I don't know, see what color looks good on you and a lipstick or an eyeshadow. So I think really just a more fun experience that like guests are wanting, right? When all the stores are open and with COVID right now, right? Pretty hard, but I think in the future, that's going to be something that needs to be there in order to keep those guests coming when they know that there's all this stuff digitally that they can just do online.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that, and I do think it's going to be different whether you're a luxury buyer or you're more mainstream or, depending on what brands you like. I think it's going to be an interesting to see what kind of experiences come up and what kind of things happen. So the next question I'm going to have for all of you, the future of retail really means a lot of responsibility, right? So you've got managing teams and, you guys might be a future CEO. I might be sitting here in front of somebody who's going to have their own business or work their way up and they're going to run the brand. So, keeping, especially during COVID, we talking about this, right? You've been talking about COVID is, in-store workers have become essential workers, right? So, and keeping motivation going, right? And the fact that when somebody comes into your store or interacts with your brand, that's the face of your brand. So as a leader, how are you, what do you think is the secret sauce for a great leader? And Anesha, I'll start with you since you finished and then we'll go back around and, anything you can think about as far as work experience or training or anything like that you think might be something, future leaders should be thinking about.
Yeah. First thing I would say is transparency. A lot of times it gets lost, especially as you're in a role, right? You're 2-3 years and it's almost like repeating itself of what you've been doing. Now you're comfortable. Being a leader, as a leader, you need to be transparent with everyone on your team as to when that comes to working conditions, personal life, development. If you're not transparent with your team, I don't think that it'll help like your business. Honestly, like
No.
if your team doesn't know, like, hey, you're really kind of slacking this week. Like, do you know what's going on with this? Or can you answer this? But if your leader isn't telling you this or giving you this feedback, then you have no idea. And right, the next thing you know, you don't have a job. And I think also another thing too, for me is creating personal relationships. That has helped me so much so far in my career, just being able to have those personal conversations outside of work with your leader or a leader, just so that like when you are working these corporate level jobs, they know like, hey, this person has something going on in the background or dealing with this. Mental health is a big thing right now. Like if you don't know these things or have these connections with your leader, your team can suffer like a lot. So I think those two things would definitely like be helpful.
How about you, Emma? What are your thoughts around leadership and kind of that secret sauce and those types of things?
Yeah, I think it's highly effective for any CEO or honestly any leader for that matter, to similar to what Anesha was saying, keep those communication lines open and frequent. I think especially on an employee level, it makes them feel as though they have a seat at the table and they're involved in those conversations that will most likely influence them in their own work environments. So I think that will keep your employees highly engaged if you keep those communication lines open. And then I think speaking further to that secret sauce piece of it,
Yeah.
I think the best leaders are also the best facilitators. They understand when they need to step up to the plate and take on responsibilities. And they also have a lot of pride in representing the brand and the people that they work for. But they also know the perfect balance between when using their own knowledge and skills to make these decisions and also understanding when it might be time to pass this responsibility off to maybe someone that's more equipped to take on this decision because it might be within their line of expertise. I think kind of that total summary there would just be the best leaders use their power overall to empower others.
Yeah. And they know their strengths, right? So they know who to work with to, who's the best to deliver a message, who's the best to facilitate these types of things if that's not their gift. So,
Yeah.
And how about you, Megan? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I couldn't agree more with what both Anesha and Emma just kind of described. And just to add on to that, I think, even tying back to what Emma was just saying, the empathy piece of it, kind of, knowing when you need to take on workload from your direct reports and when they're overwhelmed and feeling like a little stressed out in a given week, trying to see how you can step in and help alleviate some of the workload. And then just to kind of add to the training piece of it, I'd say to the students watching, you could find places to exert your leadership and influence in your everyday life in places like, a group project, taking on maybe some more responsibility in an after school job, helping plan like a big family trip or, whatever it could be, just looking for ways that you can get practice for yourself on leading a group but also, balancing that empathy, the hearing other people's point of view, all that kind of stuff, that's really in my experience, what has made some of my best leaders.
Yeah, that's all really good tips. I think you all have really hit it on the nail on the head. Transparency, I think, is definitely top of mind for everyone. And it's really great to see in the corporate world, right? It's a big change. So that being said, so you've got some great leaders in place. Let's, we've snapped our fingers and great leaders in place. And so now let's take it one step further to say, what about the community? What should retailers be or brands be in a community? So Megan, I'll go back to you with that one and tell me what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I believe retailers should be playing a pretty active and engaged role in communities that they exist in. Getting involved with local schools. I can think in growing up, some of the retailers I loved, they supported back to school items to their local public schools and all of that. Helping people get registered to vote in their local elections, making it easy and, place to answer questions, lifting up marginalized communities that these spaces may exist in. These are all things that create very authentic relationships with the communities that hopefully help carry it through, carry the customers through life.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. When I had my own retail brand, I hired students in the textiles, and they used to say to me, "Well, you don't have to pay them because they're an intern." I'm like, "What? Of course I'm going to pay them." But it was my little way, my little tiny business of saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to support the student because they're putting time and effort in." So Emma, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that Megan said, but I similarly think that retailers should play a huge role within their communities. I think that this goes hand in hand too with building that really trusting and honest customer relationship. It starts with the ground up, and it starts with interacting with your consumer and where they live and where they work and where they play, because that's very important. I do think it is worth noting, though, that community is a fairly broad term. And especially in this day and age, I think that it definitely could mean that physical space of getting involved with the community and volunteering and maybe hiring people from that community. But also, I think there's community within that digital space. Knowing our consumers find a lot of community on social media. I definitely think that it is within the retailer's best interest to play a part within that community as well.
That's a really good point, especially since social media continues to be so important. So Anesha, what are your thoughts around community and the brand?
Yeah, I am someone who purposely shops. So I like specifically shop at certain retailers or certain areas because of my own personal, right? Like what I believe or like what I want to support. So I think really just being relevant in those communities. So like for me, I grew up in an area that wasn't very developed, heavily, it's all like I'm sorry, I'm
That's okay.
stuttering a little bit. But the area I grew up in was all minorities. There is no big retailer where I live. You have to drive somewhere. It's 10 minutes away, 15 minutes. Like there is no local grocery store.
Right. Hard.
So like for me and what I grew up doing, we always went to Walmart because Walmart was the cheapest option and it was the closest retailer to us. But if it wasn't there, or if we didn't know, right, that because Walmart, they advertise how low their prices are, right? So that's where you go. But for me now, it's kind of like I'll drive an extra 20 minutes to go to support a Black owned business because I want to. And I care about supporting those businesses. So I think retailers that are in communities, especially marginalized areas, I think it's a challenge, honestly, for them to step it up in those areas, especially when it comes to providing jobs or giving back to those communities where they are taking up space.
Yeah.
So really just staying relevant to the customers anywhere you are, and not just being that big store that's just there, but actually there with a purpose.
Yeah, which I think is really hard. You make a really good point. So, here you want to support the community, but yet you're a really large organization and you've got to have some consistencies throughout these businesses. We all know that, right? We're in the business. We know if you don't have the consistencies, then a store could fail or a store could do really well, or, you know what I mean? And so you've got to be able to point to those KPIs really, right? And be able to point back and say, well, why is, this particular store doing really well in this community? So I think it's a little bit more than it used to be, right? So it's a little bit more effort. I think that, brands are really, really digging down and thinking about, especially the leaders of those organizations, and thinking about, I can't just stamp out a retail store someplace. I have to really think about how I'm going to fit into the community and how I'm going to be sure that I show up for my customers, which is really, I think, what everybody's saying. I think that's what you guys are all saying. So I think it's really great. I really do. So Megan, if you could change anything, if we could snap our fingers, what would be on your agenda for, say it was Megan's brand, what would be on your agenda?
I think, if I could change anything about, my own brand, if I were to launch one, or the industry as a whole, one thing I'd love to see is more sustainability in the industry. I think, we can probably all think of a good amount of, fast fashion retailers and all these brands that kind of contribute to a larger ecological footprint. And so I know, sustainability is growing and becoming, with millennials and Gen Z, it's a very important thing that they want to see retailers supporting. They want to see sustainable product. They want to see options for recyclable product. So the more ways that retailers can integrate this into their business is, obviously great for the planet, but also can help aid in building those relationships with the consumers, because that is by day, it seems that it's going to be a more and more important piece to shoppers.
Yeah, I think the education will be this is my 2 cents. The education will be that, if it's sustainable, it's probably not going to be $12.299, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, you guys are taking over a legacy of my generation. And that's what we were all about. Margins. How do we build those margins? Got to have those great margins. We've got to make it for the least amount of money we can and sell it for the least amount of money we can so that we show value, but we've got to have that margin. So I think you're absolutely right, Megan. I think we do have to be sustainable, and we have to really think about that. But we have to think about our consumer shift, right? And how do we educate? So
Exactly. Yeah,
which
the
is probably a
education
whole,
piece.
yeah, that's
It's a whole
other
other
thing we
can of
could- yeah,
worms,
we
but
could-
it's very important.
yeah, we can come back and talk about that later. So Anesha, let me go to you. So what are your thoughts about what could you change for your brand if it was all yours? What would be on your agenda? I bet I already know. Which is good. That's good. You're consistent. That's good.
Again, I just feel like being a people person, like
Yeah.
as a, right, which is hard because there are so many different people everywhere. But I think a lot of times for me, I get lost in product in stores because of what I'm seeing on the media. So like, I'm the kind of person who, before I go to a restaurant, I look at all the items on the menu and I look at pictures. I want to see exactly what it looks like, exactly what I'm going to be getting. So like for me, I would make sure that there is something for literally everyone. Like not just checking off boxes, but making sure we have food for this demographic. We have clothes for this size. We like, sometimes I think when there's a new trend that goes on, we kind of get lost in like whatever is trending, and then suddenly a new thing is big and we forget about this. So I think really, I just think that if we think about, as we think about the future and what that actually looks like, how do we, which is still honestly a question I have for myself, how do we make sure that we're able to, right, keep up with the trends, but also realize what's not a trend and what should just be regular or normal?
Yeah.
So really just keeping up, like, I think, and I know it's hard, like you can't turn product in a day when you see a new trend on the internet. You can't just, the product can't just pop up in the stores the next day. So I think really just trying to figure out how can we do that? Like, how do we anticipate? How do we use our resources in order to be able to, right, get the customers what they're looking for currently, but also keep up with what we already have?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And last but not least, Emma, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's the retail industry's responsibility to make every single person feel included and understood with the products that are offered to them on a daily basis. I think that's one of the most exciting things about the industry is that it reaches everyone and anyone. But at the same time, because of this, I think that the retail industry should be held accountable for initiating inclusivity and celebrating diversity through the products that are being offered and also the ways in which that they're being offered. I currently think the industry is making strides towards this ideal, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially on a global scale. And I think for me personally, that's one of the things that I would love to take on as a challenge there.
Great. So a couple of things I just wanted to share with you guys. There's 4 women on this panel talking about our future, which I love, because let me tell you, a long time ago when I was graduating college, it was not the case. So I love that we are the future. I'll throw myself in. So just before we finish, I just wanted to ask, do you guys have any questions for me? One question that you could think of, I'd be happy to answer, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I have a question for you.
All right.
I would, we talked a lot about leadership today. I'd love to hear, what were your favorite things about your best bosses and or leaders, who really hammered home what it meant to be a good leader to you?
Yeah, such a great question. And so here's what I would say, and it's going to sound, I hope it doesn't sound this way, but it's going to sound a little bit like it's all about me. But when it is our careers, it is all about us, right? And so my best bosses were, and I have 3 that I can think of on the top of my head, were the ones that really took an interest in what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And they sat down with me and helped me build that plan to get there. I remember wanting to be in the buying office when I was at Macys and I was going through the, training program. And, I had a store manager that, because you go out to the stores and you go into the buying office and go back and forth. And, I've been back out to the stores and, I did something and he brought me in and said, so what do you want to do? And I remember 4 weeks later, I was promoted. Right. And so I remember when I wanted to take a step into technology and my current boss at VF Corporation introduced me to a friend who was in technology. So, and then, I have a great current boss who, is really listening and thinking about, what do I want to do next? So that's what I would say. I would say somebody who really takes an interest in what the people reporting to them want to do and really coming together with them and coming up with that plan and supporting that plan and promoting it. That's what I think we're the best leaders that I've had, truly. So. All right. Well, thank you guys. I have to tell you, you guys are really inspiring. As you know, reach out to me on LinkedIn. We want to keep in touch. I travel. I'll come visit you. But thank you so much for joining the panel. I bet you everybody who's listening will just be in awe of how well-spoken you all are and how focused you are on the future and what you want to see happen. So thank you so much for sharing and really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for hosting our panel today.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been so fun.